Good morning. Happy Monday morning and a start to the week to you. I must confess that I really like the parts of the Bible that are more story-oriented than teaching-oriented. I like Genesis and Exodus and Esther and Daniel. I like the Gospels and Acts. But the epistles in the New Testament and some of the prophets and the wisdom writings and whatnot in the Old Testament, it's not that they leave me flat. It's just that sometimes I can't get into them quite as well because story is so important. And I love hearing the stories and thinking about the stories and whatnot. And so I love it when in those other books we find a story kind of embedded in the teaching. It's a wonderful instance of this in the second letter that Paul wrote to the Corinthian church. And Paul had both a wonderful and a difficult relationship with the Corinthian church. He had helped to found the church. He had spent 18 months there, which for Paul was an eternity. And he loved that church so much, and he wanted them to do what was right. But sometimes that was hard because they didn't do the right things, and he had to write them and try to chastise them or berate them or try to help them to do the right thing. And in 2 Corinthians 8, he has to tread into some difficult territory. He needs to talk about money. And money is always a difficult thing for pastors to talk about, and yet he needs to do this. And he had some difficulty with them where he refused to take any money from them, and they didn't really understand what was going on, but now he writes to them. And so let me first share with you what he writes, and you'll hear the story in there, and then we'll talk a little more about the implications for us. So he writes, and I'm using translation from the Message. Now, friends, I want to report on the surprising and generous ways in which God is working in the churches in Macedonia province. Fierce troubles came down on the people of those churches, pushing them to the very limit. The trial exposed their true colors. They were incredibly happy, though desperately poor. The pressure triggered something else totally unexpected, an outpouring of pure and generous gifts. I was there and I saw it for myself. They gave offerings of whatever they could, far more than they could afford, pleading for the privilege of helping out in the relief of poor Christians. This was totally spontaneous, entirely their own idea, and caught us completely off guard. What explains it was they had first given themselves unreservedly to God and to us, and the other giving simply flowed out of the purposes of God working in their lives. That's what prompted us to ask Titus to bring us the relief offering to your attention, so that what was so well begun could be finished up. You do so well in so many things. You trust God, you're articulate, you're insightful, you're passionate, you love us. Now, do your best in this too. Now, the offering that Paul and Titus are taking up is an offering for the church in Jerusalem, which has suffered tremendous persecution and is undergoing tremendous financial difficulty. And Paul is going throughout the Gentile world collecting an offering to take home to the home church in Jerusalem so that they can continue, so that they can survive and even thrive. And he's saying the churches in Macedonia, which are the northern part of Greece, although they also were desperately poor, pleaded for the chance to give because they'd given themselves over to God and they wanted to give to the home church in Jerusalem. And he's asking the church at Corinth to do the same thing. Well, the parallels for us today are quite similar, I think. We too are facing a tremendous trial. Fierce troubles have come down upon us. Economic troubles, health troubles, racial troubles, the troubles of the polarization in our society. All kinds of these troubles are impacting churches. I certainly don't want to play poor me, but I do want you to know that it is tough now for pastors. We are struggling to figure out how we best can care for people when we can't go visit them in the hospital, when many of our churches are closed down, or even when we're open, we can't open the doors for everybody and hope that everybody comes. We're trying to find ways to still make sure that our churches are doing the wonderful job of ministry in this difficult time, and it's impacting churches financially. If you are a member of First Cumberland, you need to know we are hurting right now. There's just no other way to put it. The pool is draining us of resources, or maybe I should, no pun intended, say it may drown us, and yet we want the pool open so that the community can have this wonderful opportunity for them to come and have an outdoor opportunity. We also have our daycare, and our daycare is not overstaffed but more highly staffed right now because it takes higher staff to have smaller class sizes and to do the cleaning that we need to do to keep everything safe. And so the daycare also is hurting financially right now through no fault of their own, but we are trying to keep it open so that people can go to work and so that the children can still have a wonderful, safe place to be. Our offerings and the church have gone down, even as our expenses have stayed relatively the same. And so we're hurting. If you're not a member of First Cumberland, I want to tell you, your church is hurting too, because we all are hurting. There even are some estimates that 8,000 or more churches may go out of business in the next few months because they simply won't be able to afford to keep their doors open. And so I want you to hear this message from Paul, that if we give ourselves unreservedly over to God first, we will find a way to give, to help out, even to plead for the privilege of giving, as the church in Macedonia did. If you are, again, a member of First Cumberland, I want you to know that we are going to continue, as long as we can, to offer these videos, because that has been a wonderful way, both the daily devotionals and the Sunday worship service, to try to keep us in touch with one another. We are going to continue to keep the pool open and keep the daycare running, but we're going to need your help. If you were at the in-person worship yesterday, you heard Sarah Quattrochi tell a wonderful story about how our church is helping to take 5 families who are families from our neighborhood and find them housing, families that were essentially homeless. And they are now getting housing, and we are trying to find ways to provide for them with the basic essentials of a house, whether it's pots and pans or sheets or a bed or a washer or dryer or whatever. This is the ministry that we're doing. But the only way we can do it is if all of us make sure that we give. Again, I am not bragging at all, but I want you to know, as I've said before, Lee and I decided at the very beginning of the pandemic that we were going to increase the money that we were giving to the church because we knew that the church was going to need it. And we really didn't know it'd be going this long, but still, every week we're giving more than we did before. Not a whole lot more, but some more. And we know that that's going to add up. And we are committed to continue to try that. And so I want to challenge you, as Paul challenged the churches at Macedonia, as uncomfortable as it was for Paul, as uncomfortable as it is for me, for you to give. Give to First Cumberland if you're a member of First Cumberland. Give to your church if you are a member of a different church. And if you can give more, even more than you can afford, as Paul said, because now is a time when your church needs you. If you were either listened to the video or watched our worship service yesterday or were in person in our worship service, Jesus simply said to the disciples before the feeding of the 5,000, "Bring to me what you have." And he took what they brought and multiplied it and made it enough to feed an entire multitude. If you do your part, if you give what you have, what you can to your church, it will make a difference, and Jesus will multiply it, and the gospel will continue to be preached. You do so well in so many things, said Paul. You trust God, you're articulate, you're insightful, you're passionate, you love us. Now do your best in this too. And we can do this. We can do this together because God is with us. Amen.